Welcome to Health Diary. My name is Winnie Lubembe and we're coming to you from 4 Point by Sheraton right here in Hurlingham. Now, we all go through some form of loss, but the question is how many of us take time to grieve, and do we even know the grieving process and what could happen if we do not grieve whatever loss that we go through? Well, we'll be unpacking that in today's conversation right here on Health Diary. But before that, take a look at this fact of the matter. Depression is a common mental disorder affecting an estimated 264 million people globally. Kenya was ranked 4th in Africa, having an estimated 1.9 million people with the condition. A number of local studies have found depression to be the most frequently diagnosed mental illness, which at its worst can lead to suicide. All right, so let's get to understand more in terms of dealing with grief and how that can lead to depression and how do you handle that. Well, to help us with the conversation, I am joined by Wanjiru Mbogori, who is a trauma therapist. It's so good to see you once again. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks.
You're well, karibu sana. And of course, we also have Helen Wong, who is here to share her experience with us and of course just help us understand how then do you deal, with a case of loss and grief, and at the same time, just dealing with depressive episodes here and there. And has she healed? Is she on a healing journey? Of course, she'll share with us as well. So Helen, it's so good to see you. Karibu sana. And first of all, thank you. Thank you for coming by, really, to share with us this, because it's not easy. But Wanjiru, let's just begin with you. You know, when we talk about loss and just grief in general, because loss can come in different ways, right? Can we just start with that aspect of loss?
So loss is something that is significant to each one of us, and it's something that's going to happen to each one of us at some point or other. Now, reason for grieving is you want to be able to move on, put one step in front of the other after that loss. And, we imagine sometimes it's just losing people. Losing pets is just as hard. Losing a job, losing a livelihood, anything you lose. If you don't deal with the loss of that, and depending on why you understand why you're losing it, if you haven't understood that this is really for your life, you end up grieving a long time.
That's true.
Or leading to death. There are people who are diagnosed with something like cancer, and immediately it's like, oh my God, death.
This is it.
And they don't recover. Why? Because they have not been able to go through the process of grieving that part of themselves, or that the wholeness, particularly breast cancer for women. If you imagine you're going to walk through life with one breast or no breast, then it becomes very difficult to deal with. And that is why it's a good thing to work on it, grieve, and that is what grieving is about. Because when you're grieving, it means you are allowing yourself to feel the pain and then trying now using other coping mechanisms to get rid of it, to deal with it.
Absolutely. Okay. So Helen, a lot has happened, to you, and at some point, a lot of things happened in a very, limited amount of time, like small amount of time, and it was just too much for you to handle. And talking about it, it goes way back, right? You went through therapy, still going through therapy, if we can say that. So can we just go back to what exactly made you go through therapy?
I think it was in 2019. I got a new friend at an occasion, and then we were just interacting, and then they were like, how you're dealing with situations, I think you really need to start with therapy. I was like, okay. So he hooked me up with his friend, and I started going for therapy at Kenyatta Hospital. It was amazing because you were able to realize where this issue of not dealing with things, where it all started. So I got to understand where you know, when someone tells you to do this, you're not able to do it because it has started from somewhere.
Okay. So understanding all those things, and I just want us to go back in terms of your friend noticed something, right? In terms of how you were handling things, how you were, the decisions that you were making, and they were like, I no, this is not it. So maybe just tell us what exactly, maybe like an instant that this person noticed and said, this is something that needs to be looked into.
Maybe something like, can we meet up? And you're like, yes. No, let me, you know, where, so you're not able to like stand firm with a decision. If someone has annoyed you, you're not able to like really say what, because you see it has started like way back. When you speak up, you're told, no, you're not supposed to say that, you know, that's not an issue. So that's, I think that's how he noticed that, you know what, you need to talk to someone to be able to be firm with what you really want.
Okay. So, and of course, when you went for therapy, of course, it all pointed out that it started from home, and again to a level that you're comfortable to talk about. So, what exactly did the therapist or yourself pick that led or impacted your decisions, your actions, and just everything that revolves around you?
When I shared with her the issues that were happening, like, you know, they'll want to know your background story, so they'll ask you how is your relationship with your mom, with your dad, and then so I explained, and they were like, okay, so give me an instant. So, you know, there's something that we used to do, role play. So I'll just be myself and she'll be my mom or my dad. So I tell her, like, Mom, I want to do this and this and this. And she'll be like, why? So I become a bit hesitant to say why, because I am scared of what the why, you know, when I explain myself, how will that reaction come back to me? So then that's when she said, you see, you're not able to express yourself because there's like a block,
yes.
Like you're scared of. It still happens because I when I express myself, I don't know, like the next person what they'll say.
How the reaction,
you know, and you didn't maybe have ill intentions. You just want them to listen to what you're just trying to say.
Yeah.
So she just realized that because of that relationship or the responses that I was getting from home, now the problem started there.
All right. So, and of course, there's a lot of losses, you know, from there, that when you got into a relationship, of course, this also, you know, had an impact in your life. So just take us through your relationship, again, to a level that you're comfortable with, to share that part of loss that you experienced.
My relationship at home is not that fine. So you see, because of lack of the affection and attention, you yearn it, you like feel like, you know, I want to feel this from somewhere else. So you get a friend, you start dating, you talk, they give you the affection you need, the attention you need. So you forget yourself for a moment, you know, you're happy, you're excited, you're making even plans in your head. And then boom, you realize that you are a side chick, you know, so, and then they end up telling you, I love this person more than I love you, you know. And at the same time, I remember that incident. I was going through grief, loss of someone that I loved dearly. So, and then all of a sudden you realize you are not the only person in this person's life, and it felt like they didn't even care about you for any moment. So all this just comes into one big whole, and you're like, wow, what's really happening? Everything is just falling apart. You feel like no one really cares. You feel like you're worthless. No, you're not. You don't even deserve to be loved. You know, no one is really there. So it was so heavy that I became really suicidal.
Let me bring in Wanjiru in this sense, because it's a lot, right? It's a lot to first of all, to try and process, because for her, of course, it started way back, and that influenced her choices, decisions, everything around her. And then at some point, she lost a number of things that were very important and valuable to her. So can we just understand, first of all, how the brain, you know, sort of tries to adapt to, because you're not getting this at home where you are supposed to get it anyway, and how that then sort of shapes who we are as a people, even growing up?
The growing up, the developmental years are very, very important in a person's life as they grow, because they shape you. Now, as she said, as Helen said, what she didn't get, now the minute somebody comes along, looks like they're giving it to her. Because in the brain we have the nerves that are telling us, you know, we've got the happy things there that we want something happy, we want something good. That's how we know what is good, what is bad. So if we want something good, there's something in our heads telling us, what I didn't get there, I'm getting here. And then you go all out. Then you hit the brick wall. So you get crushed. And it's almost like it's my fault. I don't get it at home. I didn't get it when I was growing up. So it must be me. So that's what now starts going on in the brain. And it's not anything that you can, that other people will relate to, because they're people who don't crave it because they have seen it over generations. Now, if you crave it because you know it, you've seen and you've got the example of it, you do not see why you cannot get it. And so the first one that comes along, and usually that is where people go. So hence a bad relationship. Hence, you know, even not reading that relationship right, because you're looking for something, and the minute you see a semblance of it, you run for it. So when she gets crushed, when Helen gets crushed, then it's a whole myriad of things. Hence her eventual route now to, I must end this because it's too painful.
How about we just put a pause and take a break and just, because it really is heavy, because you talked about how important it is to just, first of all, go through the grieving process, and then, you know, see what happens later on. And of course, we'd also want to understand, so were you able to deal with the same? Were you able to grieve? How are you now? Because like we said, you're still going through therapy. So of course, all that conversation is coming up after the short break. Stay with us. This is Health Diary. Welcome back. This is Health Diary, and just in case you're tuning in right now, today our focus is mostly on loss and grief, but of course depression from the same, and that is dealing with loss, all right? And of course, to help us with the conversation, I am joined by Wanjiru Mbogori, who is a trauma therapist, as well as Helen Wong, who is again sharing her experience, you know, as far as loss and grief is concerned, and the journey towards therapy and just healing, really, as a person. So Helen, again, dealing with all this and going through therapy and having to go all the way back, right? How are you? What were you exhibiting that someone would say she's not okay?
Right now, I'm not 100% okay, but I'm learning a lot, mostly about mental health and how to deal with these things. And mostly the thing that I wish most about is I wish I put myself first in everything. Like if it's at home, I wish I just put myself first. If it's a relationship, I wish I put myself first. Because honestly, there are consequences for not putting yourself first. Something I didn't mention is I used to harm myself. When I got angry or I felt a lot of pain, I used to take a razor blade and cut my hand. I have some few scars, but they're ending. And right now, I try to just calm myself down. You can take deep breaths, count 1 to 10, and then, you know, take a walk, call a friend, you know. In as much as at some point you feel like you don't really have a friend, because you feel that way. but I am sure you won't lack one person who will listen to you. So getting to see my circle, getting to at least say no, it has been hard. But
you're trying.
I'm
like
trying,
you said,
you know,
still,
and
still
standing firm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and standing firm, I'm like, no. And if they ask why, I'm like, no, it's enough. I've said no. So you don't really have to explain yourself.
But yeah, why do we sometimes people get to that point of harming themselves physically in order to deal with the pain that they feel inside?
Because it's too much. It is too much and they have no way of letting it out. So if they can feel a different kind of pain, then that, like she says, brings her back to reality. Okay, I can feel this pain. Because sometimes you're so numb from pain. One can get, when I talk about grief is personal. How I grieve, how you grieve, how Helen grieves are totally different. We may have the same relative or the same loss, but how we grieve is different. Now, one of us may be able to express and say, I feel so bad. I don't know what to do. Another person may think, oh, if I tell them how I feel, they'll think. So it's inside. The pain is so deep that you do not know what to do with it, that you feel like if you cut yourself, that pain, that sharp pain you feel is what brings you back to, yes, okay, I'm still human, I'm still here. Because sometimes it's just that shutdown. Because with grief, people tend to shut down as well. There are people who don't talk. With Helen, there is a multiple sense of loss and a lot of things. And then maybe, like, we talked about self-blame. She may be blaming herself for some of it, especially things that happen as a child. Because children are very good at seeing what is happening, but they don't always perceive. They don't always understand what is going on. So if there are quarrels in the home, all they can tell you is noise, 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 Like, there's a child who thought the parents were fighting, and I said, actually, they're not fighting. They're just being loud. Yeah. But when you've lived in a home where there hasn't been that kind of thing, suddenly there is loud noise, it becomes noise to the child. So if, Helen has carried a lot of baggage, a lot of unresolved grief, unresolved issues, and then they've been compounded by different other losses.
Losses, yes. And Helen, you said in all these losses, at no given point did you grieve. So then, like coping for you, what did that look like before you went through therapy?
Honestly, I didn't think I'll be here. I didn't think I'll be here. It wasn't even in my mind. So find someone you can talk to. Do therapy. It honestly helps. I kind of stopped because my therapist, I was supposed to see a psychiatrist, but I was really scared of them telling me that I have to take medicines, and medicines were freaking me out at that point. So I was like, no. And also the fear of opening up to someone new, because, this person was my safe space. But it's okay, you can start afresh. Yeah.
When you're then grieving process, then what does that look like, and why is it important? And I think just talking before we came on here, we got to understand there's a bit of depression as well, but it's like sort of like on and off.
Yeah, depression is one of those things that can manifest if you don't grieve, because grieving is a process, as you say. And I say it's a process because you go through different emotions, and it's not neat. As far as grief is concerned, it's not neat. Today, Helen is very good. Tomorrow, she may be not able to get out of bed. She might just stay there and not get out. So it's one of those things one has to understand, that as you work through it and as you allow yourself to go through the pain, acknowledge that this has happened. If it's a loss of a loved one, yes, they have gone. But I am here. What can I do to keep that memory alive without me feeling like they're gone forever. Sometimes the sad thing is people don't allow others to grieve, because that is when they start telling you, for the sake of the children. No, you need that parent to grieve in front of the children so that the children have the right to grieve. Because everybody hides behind everybody else. The children don't want to show their mother they're crying. The mother doesn't want to show. So they know they're not to grieve. And that, if you live and grow up that way, that's how you live. So you bottle up. Like Helen was saying, there were things in her she wasn't bringing out. She wasn't able to do that with her therapist because she has been taught that this is a no-go area. Depression comes into that cycle as well because there is bitterness in that cycle. There is anger. There's a lot of emotions that one will go through, including depression. And depression will set in particularly where there's some bitterness. So it's like you're bringing it on yourself.
Yeah, it's like, the first one, you'll not be the last one to just deal with it.
And
right?
we've all lost this person, so what's wrong with you?
Or,
you've lost this relationship. There are many others.
Yeah.
But they're not giving you a chance to feel this relationship you're coming out of and say, okay, so it ended this way. It's not about me. It's not my fault. Like, you've come from a point where you're blaming yourself over the years. Now this one happened. So what's wrong with me? Yeah.
Okay. So Helen, I know you're still going through therapy, right? But what would you tell someone who probably is watching us and thinking, where do I start from? Who do I turn to? Where do I start from that process of therapy? And also there's an aspect of cost to therapy where some people would just rather not because it's expensive. What would you say to them?
Start. Find something that's workable for you. Reach out to people you know who have been through therapy. I know it's scary when you tell someone, I'm doing therapy, and people get so judgy. But it's not bad. It's actually the most amazing safe space you can ever get.
And then in terms of things like grief, and a lot of some of these things, and it's very brave, Helen, to do therapy. Thank you for really affirming that, because a lot of people think it's like, how do you go and listen to a shrink tell you about your problems? Yes. It's not about that. It's about helping navigate her thoughts, for her to see or hear herself, because that's what we do. But there's also group therapy. You might be able to find a group that does things like grief, some of these problems, especially with younger people. Like Helen, you might find a group which is cheaper still. Yeah. But nevertheless, it's a negotiating process with a therapist, because each one of us who gives therapy, in many ways, give back by allowing some to pay less, because you have to look at case by case. So it's not always a case of I am stuck on this amount of money.
So let's say someone is watching us and thinking, so then what do I do in the event that I notice someone, for example, is not okay, with the depression? What can people around them do?
Support is meant to is like walking alongside this person. So if you're going to walk alongside this person, she's probably the best person to tell you how to support her. One of the worst thing that can happen is somebody telling you now what is wrong with you. Like I was saying, why are you crying? Ni who, ni he, or that or the other. Even if it's a dog, a pet, whatever. Allow them to share. Allow them to talk. Allow them to cry. But we are uncomfortable with that, so people tend to say, bas, apana. Let them cry. Let them, really cry that thing out, and then get out of it and say, oh, okay, where were we?
Thank you very much, Wanjiru Mbogori, trauma therapist, as well as Helen Wong, who of course came here today to just share, her experiences, past loss and grief, and also going through therapy. And I hope that you've learned a lot. So we say thank you, first of all the very best in your journey towards healing, and we hope that you will get there. And of course, time for you to take a look at this health tip.
If we talk about first aid for eyes, there are several scenarios. The commonest things is what we use in the house: Jik, Omo, Toss. The first aid is always wash. If you can put your head in a basin of water and then just open your eyes in the water, that is perfect. There are more dangerous things, and the common ones are cement and, of course, battery acid. Cement is very, very dangerous to your eyes. And that one, you really need to wash your eyes and get to the nearest eye hospital. If it's battery acid you just wash. Wash. Actually, what we do is we get litmus paper. I don't know whether people remember that chemistry of high school. You put litmus paper in your eye and make sure it doesn't turn.
Well, from today's conversation, the most important part is it is okay not to be okay, and it is okay at the same time to seek help, whether you feel okay or not. Therapy is important for all of us. So I hope that you will take that initiative and just go for therapy. All right. So we have to say goodbye. My name is Winnie Lubembe. A special thanks to 4 Points by Sheraton for hosting us. If you have more questions on today's conversation, feel free to interact with us on our social media platforms. Until next time, adios. Nick, take this.